This is a story about what one Finnish soldier went through during World War II. His strange tale of survival behind enemy lines and what helped him push through. I mean, seriously, you wouldn't believe what happened to the guy. Even now, reading it, it all sounds so surreal and cartoonish that you can't help but wonder, did it actually happen? The guy was in a delirious state for several weeks, hallucinating for several days at a time, all alone skiing for some 250 miles on -4 degrees Fahrenheit. But how did it get to that? First things first, why don't you like the video and subscribe to my channel? It helps me make this kind of content and I'd really appreciate it if you do it. Now, a little bit of a backstory wouldn't hurt to know the background of who was fighting who and why. During 1939, Finns and Soviets were already at war. Mostly because some kind of a land dispute. Stalin wanted the land around St. Petersburg and up far in the north to be ceded to Soviets, or rather be given back to them, since at one point in time it was part of a Russian empire. Finns, on the other hand, had no intention of giving anything to anyone back. As far as they were concerned, the lands had gained their independence back and they had no desire to relinquish that independence back to the Russian authorities. Stalin, being the grumpy old man at that point, didn't like that, so invasion started and the Winter War began. You'd think that Soviets would just run over the Finns like they were nothing and stomp them all the way around, but you'd be dead wrong. They put up a serious fight. It was quite amazing and strange how they managed to withhold so long against such an overwhelming army, the Red Army. The Russians were suffering great casualties on all four fronts, and if they didn't have such a huge number advantage, they'd be the one suffering loss of this war. But be that as it may, somewhere early in the 1940s, Finnish government decided that it was enough and that they had to relinquish the lands back to the Soviets. As you can imagine, the Finns were generally pissed at this arrangement, while the Soviets could now leisurely sit back and focus their attention fully on the threat that is now Nazi Germany. But come 1941, and now Finns and Germans are in alliance. And guess what? Now they attack Soviets from several different fronts. Now, Finns claim that they joined this alliance only to reclaim their lands, and everything after that would be just null. How much of that is true? Who knows? But I can tell you that they went all the way back to the Leningrad, where they fought against the Soviets until 1944, when Soviets finally managed to push them back. And push them back they did, all the way back to Lapland, where both Germans and Finns both suffered wins and losses against the Red Army. But little by little they were being driven back to Finland. And here comes our protagonist, the second most famous Finnish soldier, but back then just a regular scout for his team. Can you guess who's the most famous Finnish soldier? Let me know down in the comments. Maybe I'll do a story about him. Somewhere south of the port city Murmansk, Finnish Scout ski patrol, along with Aimo Koivunen as their scout, was being ambushed by Red Army. They were trying to encircle them and make them surrender by firing from different sides, but Aimo, along with several of his comrades, managed to slip through and escape at the right time. Now he was at the front in the fresh, or as they say, virgin snow, making way for his friends to cross. So his job was a little bit more physically tasking. They were running and running through snow, not wanting to stop and look back because they knew the Soviets were at their heels. They also didn't want to give up. This little chase persisted on, and Aimo soon started to feel more and more tired by the minute. The initial adrenaline had long worn off and now he was on his last fumes. Luckily for him, he was tasked with carrying the whole unit's supply of pervitin, which was quite usual for German and Finnish soldiers at the time. Now here's a little quiz for all of those watching. Can you guess without googling what pervitin is? Can you? Is it a strong dose of caffeine that was meant to boost their energy and keep them awake for several hours while they were on a front? Or B, is it meth? A methamphetamine that was usually distributed to soldiers of Nazi Germany and later even used as cough medicine. Of course it's meth. Why wouldn't it be meth? Don't be fooled by people saying, oh, Hitler was all against the drugs and all that stuff. The guy was most of the time on the drugs. Ugh, Scheiße. Where is the phone? Hello, Heil Titla. What? No, I didn't say Titla. It must have been you. I said Fitla. What? Stop making the drugs, you say, but we aren't making any drugs here. We are making vitamins. Yes, vitamins. What kind of vitamins? You know the vitamins. The vitamin P. Yeah, vitamin P. We call it pervitin. That is all? Okay, ciao Didla. Verdammt nochmal. In fact, there is some evidence that suggests that between their talks between Hitler and Mussolini, at one time when Italy wanted to opt out of the Axis and the war altogether, that Hitler was so high on cocaine that he talked through the whole meeting. The poor bastard Mussolini just sat there sweating like a pig and observing the other guy yapping on and on and on and on. At one point he even forgot what he wanted to ask. So the meeting ended and nothing changed. Back on the topic. So Aimo had a whole supply of pervitin at him, and he wanted to take one. After all, it was a drug that was advertised as something that you use when you wanna, keep yourself awake. And he was dead tired at this point. But unfortunately, in the darkness and all out of breath, he couldn't take out even a single pill out of the bottle. And he couldn't use his fingers either since he had his mittens on. So in frustration, he just chugged the whole bottle down the throat. Like, what's the worst that can happen? Being awake for 2 hours instead of 1? Come on. Immediately he felt a burst of energy and he started to ski much faster. And his squad was initially following him step by step. But his pace soon sped up again and again and again. Soviets finally gave up since they couldn't physically keep up with them. And then all of a sudden, shit got weird. His vision started to blurry and he started to see hallucinations all around him. And then he lost consciousness. He basically blacked out while still on his skis. And my guy did not stop skiing. In a blackout state, he continued to push forward and went on and on and on. In fact, the very next day when he finally got a hold of himself and looked around to see what's going on, there was no one around him. He was all alone. In fact, he traversed 62 miles overnight. Now over 60 miles in the enemy territory all alone with only his rifle and no additional ammunition. Still under the influence, he now had to figure out what to do next. So since downing the whole bottle of meth, he had energy to spare for months. So he decided to continue skiing forward. Very soon he found out that Soviets in fact did not give up on the chase, as he ran into them several times and then had to promptly escape every single time. He would run through snow and run into Soviet patrol, then promptly ran through them like a goddamn wild animal, leaving them to wonder what the hell just happened and who the fuck was that guy. Rinse and repeat for several times. While on run from them, he even tripped a landmine, which seriously injured him and set a fire nearby. Lucky bastard survived all those run-ins with the Soviets. An overwhelming dose of meth in his system survived the landmine, but now he was laying down in a ditch, too hurt to move and too afraid to make a noise so the scouts wouldn't hear him. He in fact lay there for several days, floating in and out of consciousness, still in a delirious state, still seeing hallucinations around him, hearing occasional yells, "He's here," and whatnot. Seeing as no help was coming and knowing full well that on -4 degrees Fahrenheit in a forest he wouldn't last long, he got up and on his skis. Of course, not knowing in which direction to go. Traveling through snow, the meth was still suppressing his appetite, but little by little it was coming back. So he had to eat something to fuel that energy expenditure. So he ate pine buds. There was little to nothing else around. It was winter and all the way up high in the north. One day he got lucky and caught Siberian jay. This cute little bird is quite common throughout whole Europe and Asia, not endangered at all. So he ate it. Raw. I mean, you gotta do what you gotta do, I guess. Keep in mind that drugs were still very much in his system and he was still very much delirious. Pushing through, he eventually reached Finnish territory by some miracle and he was immediately rushed to the hospital. He traveled somewhere around 250 miles from the point where the Red Army encircled him and his team, and they managed to escape. At the hospital, they checked his heart rate, which was at shocking 200 beats per minute. Just for reference, in adults, the normal resting heart rate is anywhere between 60 beats to 100 beats per minute. And he was now weighing only 94 pounds. It is worth noting that Aimo Koivunen is the only known soldier to effectively survive such an overdose on meth behind the enemy lines. Even though meth and speed were both readily available left and right around that time. In fact, he survived the whole World War II despite this and managed to live all the way to 1989, where he died at the age of 72. His story of survival is now a part of history of Finland wartime commander force. Even in his olden days, he couldn't remember how the fuck he managed to lose his whole squad while shit-faced on meth. Man had some serious luck to survive both meth and Soviets at the time. This story is so fucking funny that if you visualize it in your head, it sounds like a Benny Hill sketch with that stupid music. Anyway, that's it for today. A short and sweet wartime story, you could say. Who knows what I'll have in store for the next? That's why I always say, you better like the video and subscribe if you haven't already. Hopefully I'll see you next time. See ya!